7. The Rarest Vintage. The two metals of primary significance are zinc and brass, which allow you to control expression strength. Zinc wires touching the gemstone will cause the spren inside to be more strongly manifest, while brass will cause the spren to withdraw and its power to dim. Remember that a gemstone must be properly infused following the spren's capture. Drilled holes in the gemstone are ideal for proper use of the cage wires, so long as you don't crack the structure and risk releasing the spren. Lecture on Fabrial Mechanics, presented by Navani Colin to the Coalition of Monarchs, Urithiru, Yesevan, 1175. Vale stepped up to Iole Sadius. She'd heard of this woman's craftiness, her competence. Vale was therefore surprised to find the woman looking so weathered. Iole Sadius was a woman of moderate height. While she'd never been renowned as a great beauty, she seemed to have withered since Shallan had last seen her. Though she wore a dress of the sharpest and most recent fashion, embroidered along the sides, it seemed to hang on her like a cloak on a tavern's wall peg. Her cheeks were sunken and hollow, and she held an empty wine cup in her hand. "So, you've finally come for me," she said. Vale hesitated. What did that mean? Strike now, Vale thought. Summon the blade. Burn those self-satisfied eyes out of her skull. But she wouldn't act on her will alone. They had a balance, an important one. The three never did what only one of them wanted, not in regard to a decision this important, and so she held back. Radiant didn't want to kill Iole. She was too honorable. But what of Shallan? Not yet, Shallan thought. Talk to her first. Find out what she knows. Therefore Vale bowed, staying in character. My queen. Iole snapped her fingers, and the guard retreated with the last of the cultists, closing the door behind him. She wasn't the frightened type, Iole Sadius, though Vale did notice a door on the far wall of the room, behind Iole, as a potential exit. Iole sat back in her chair, letting Vale hold the bow. I do not intend to be queen, she eventually said. That is a lie that some of my more over-eager followers perpetuate. Who then do you support for the throne? Surely not the usurper Dalinar, or the niece he has appointed unlawfully. Iole watched Vale, who slowly stood from the bow. In the past, Iole said, I have supported the heir, Elokar's son, Gavilar's grandson, the rightful king. He is only a boy, not yet 6. Then urgent action must be taken, Iole said, to rescue him from the clutches of his aunt and great-uncle, the rats who have deposed him. To support me is not to upset the lineage, but to work for a better, stable, and correct Alethi union. Clever. Under such a guise, Iole could pretend to be a humble patriot. But why did she look so haunted? A wreckage of her former self. She'd been hit hard by Sadius's death and the traitorous turn of Amaram's army. Had those events encouraged a downward spiral? Most importantly, who was the spy this woman had close to Dalinar? Iole stood up, letting her wine cup roll off the table and shatter on the floor. She walked past Vale to the nearby hutch and rolled up the front, revealing a dozen or more carafes of wine, each a different color. While Iole was surveying these, Vale held her hand to the side and began summoning her shard blade. Not to strike, but because Pattern was with Aderlin. The act of summoning should give Pattern an indication of her direction. She stopped almost immediately, preventing the sword from coalescing. Adolin would want to come find her. Unfortunately, striking against Iale's fortress would be more dangerous than jumping a group of conspirators in the chasm. Dalinar had no authority here, and though the light-weaving Shallan had stuck to Adolin would keep him from being recognized, Vale wasn't certain he could risk moving in the open. "Do you favor wines?" Iale asked her. "I'm not particularly thirsty, Brightness," Vale said. "Join me anyway." Vale stepped up beside her, looking at the array of wines. "This is quite a collection." "Yes," Iale said, selecting one, a clear, probably a grain alcohol. Left uninfused, the color gave no indication of flavoring or potency. "I requisition samples of the vintages that pass through the war camps. It is one of the few luxuries these heralds' forsaken stormlands can offer." She poured a small cup, and Vale could immediately tell she'd been wrong. It didn't have the sharp, immediately overpowering sensation of something like a Horneater vintage. Instead, there was a fruity scent mixed with the faint stench of alcohol. Curious. Iale offered it to Vale first, who accepted the cup and took a drink. It tasted sharply sweet, like a dessert wine. How had they made it clear? Most fruit wines had natural coloring. "No fear of poison?" Iale asked. "Why should I fear poison, Brightness?" "This was prepared for me, and there are many who would see me dead. Remaining in my proximity can be dangerous." "Like the attack in the chasm earlier?" "It is not the first such strike," she said, though Vale knew of no others that Dalinar had ordered. "Strange, how easily my enemies strike at me in quiet, dark chasms, yet it has taken them so long to attack me in my chambers." She looked right at Vale. Damnation! She knew what Vale had come here to do. Iale drank deeply. "What do you think of the wine?" "It was nice." "That's all?" Iale held up her cup, inspecting the last few drops. "It's sweet, fermented from a fruit, not a grain. It reminds me of visits to Gavilar's wineries. I would guess it an Alethi vintage, rescued before the kingdom fell, made from simberries. The flesh of the fruit is clear, and they took great care to remove the rinds, revealing what was truly inside." Yes, she did suspect. After a moment of decision, Shallan emerged. If it was to be wordplay, then she should be the one in control. Iale selected another carafe, this time a pale orange. "How is it," she said, "that you have access to such important documents as Navani's schematics?" She can be extremely secretive with her projects, not because she fears someone stealing them, but because she relishes a dramatic reveal. "I cannot give away my sources," Shallan said. "Surely you understand the importance of protecting the identities of those who serve you." She pretended to think. "Though I can perhaps share a name, if I were to get one in return. Someone you have close to the king. A way for both of us to have further access to the Kholin inner circle." "A little clumsy," Vale noted. "You sure you want control right now?" Iale smiled, then handed Shallan a small cup of the orange. She took it and found it bland and flavorless. "Well?" Iale asked, sipping her own cup. "It is weak," Shallan said. "Powerless. Yet I taste a hint of something wrong, a touch of sourness, an annoyance that should be exterminated from the vintage. And yet," Iale said, "it looks so good. A proper orange to be enjoyed by children, and those who act like them." Perfect for people who want to maintain appearances before others. Then the sourness. That's what this vintage truly is, isn't it? Awful, no matter how it may appear. To what end? Shalon asked. What good does it do to package an inferior wine with such a fine label? It might fool some, for a time, Ialai said. Allow the winemaker to gain quick and easy ground over his competition. But he'll eventually be revealed as a fraud, and his creation will be discarded in favor of a truly strong or noble vintage. You make bold claims, Shalon said. One hopes the winemaker doesn't hear. He might be irate. Let him be. We both know what he is. As Ialai moved to serve a third cup, Shalon began to summon her shard blade again, giving Pattern another hint to indicate her direction. Bring it all the way, Vale thought. Strike! Is this who we want to be with our powers? Radiant thought. If we start down this path, where will it lead us? Could they really serve Dalinar Kholin by acting against his explicit orders? He didn't want this. He probably should, but he didn't. Ah, here, Ialai said. Perfect. She held up a deep blue. This time she didn't offer it to Shalon first, but took a sip. A wonderful vintage, but the last of its kind. Every other bottle destroyed in a fire. After today, even this bit will be gone. You seem so resigned, Shalon said. The Ialai Sadeas I've heard about would scour entire kingdoms looking for another bottle of the vintage she so loves, never surrendering. That Ialai wasn't nearly so tired, she said, her hand drooping, as if the weight of the cup of wine was somehow too great. I fought for so long, and now I'm alone. Sometimes it seems the very shadows work against me. Ialai selected a carafe of Horn-Eater White. Shalon could smell it as soon as the top was off, and held it out. I believe this is yours. Invisible. Deadly. Shalon didn't take the drink. Get on with it, Ialai said. You killed Thanadal when he tried to deal, so I can't try that. You hunted Vama and murdered him after he fled, and there's little chance of me surviving the same. I thought I might be safe if I hunkered down for a time. Yet here you are. Invisible. Deadly. Sweet wisdom of Bata. Shalon had been engaging in this entire conversation, assuming that Ialai knew her for an operative of Dalinar. That wasn't the case at all. Ialai saw her as an operative of Mraize, of the Ghost Bloods. You killed Thanadal, Shalon said. Ialai laughed. He told you that, did he? So they lie to their own? Mraize hadn't specifically told her Ialai had killed Thanadal, but he'd clearly implied it. Vale gritted her teeth, frustrated. She'd come here of her own volition. Yes, Mraize was always hinting to her what he and the Ghost Bloods wanted, but Vale did not serve him. She had undertaken this mission for the good of Alethkar and Adolin, and— Go on, Ialai said. Do it! Vale thrust her hand to the side, summoning her shard blade. Ialai dropped the carafe of Horn-Eater White, jumping despite herself. Though fear spren boiled up from the ground, Ialai merely closed her eyes. Oh, a perky voice said in Vale's mind. We were almost here anyway, Vale. What are we doing? Did they at least tell you why they decided we need to die? Ialai asked. Why they hated Gavilar, Amaram, me and Thanadal, once we knew the secrets? What is it about the Sons of Honor that frightens them? Vale hesitated. You found her, Pattern said in her mind. "Do you have evidence like Dalinar wanted?" "They'll send you after Restaries next," Ela said. "But they'll watch you. In case you rise high enough, learn enough to threaten them. Have you asked yourself what they want? What they expect to get out of the end of the world?"
"Power," Vale said.
"Ah, nebulous power. No, it is more specific than that. Most of the Sons of Honor simply wanted their gods back. But Gavilar saw more. He saw entire worlds."
"Tell me more,"
Vale said. Shouts sounded outside the room. Vale glanced at the door in time to see a brilliant shard blade slice through the lock. Adolin, wearing the false face she'd given him, kicked open the door a moment later. People flooded in around him, soldiers and 5 of Shallan's Lightweaver agents.
"Once I'm dead," Ela hissed.
"Don't let them search my rooms before you do. Look for the rarest vintage. It is exotic."
"Don't give me riddles," the 3 said. "Give me answers.
What are the Ghost Bloods trying to do?"
Ela closed her eyes.
"Do it!"
Instead, the 3 dismissed her blade. "I vote against killing her," Vale thought.
Killing her would mean she had been manipulated by Marays. She hated that idea.
"You're not dying today," the 3 said.
"I have more questions for you."
Ela kept her eyes closed.
"I won't get to answer. They won't let me."
Shallan emerged,
calming her nerves as several soldiers rushed up to surround Ela. Vale and Radiant settled back, both pleased at this outcome. They were their own person. They did not belong to Marays. She shook her head and trotted over to Adolin, then dismissed his illusory face with a touch. She needed to see him as himself.
"Which one are you?"
he asked quietly, giving her a pouch of infused spheres.
"Shallan,"
she said, putting the pouch into her satchel, which a soldier had fetched for her from beside the wall. She glanced over her shoulder as the soldiers bound Ela, and again Shallan was struck by how deflated the woman looked. Adolin pulled Shallan close.
"Did she confess to you?"
"She danced around it," Shallan said. "But I think I can make a case to Dalinar that what she said constitutes treason. She wants to depose Yasna and put Elokar's son on the throne."
"Gavinar's way too young."
"And she'd be guiding him," Shallan said. "Which is why she's a traitor. She wants the power." But Ela had spoken like that plan was in the past, as if she were now fighting only for survival. Had the Ghost Bloods truly killed High Princes Thanadal and Vama?
"Well," Adolin said, "with her in custody, perhaps we can get her armies to stand down. We can't afford a war with our own right now."
"Ishna?" Shallan called, drawing the attention of one of her agents. The short Alethi woman hastened over. She'd been with Shallan for over a year now, and along with Vatha, leader of the deserters that Shallan had recruited, was one of those she trusted most.
"Yeah, Brightness?" Ishna asked.
"Take Vatha and Beryl. Go with those soldiers and make certain they don't let Ela speak to anyone. Gag her if you have to. She has a way of getting inside people's heads."
"Consider it done," Ishna said. "You want to put the illusion on her first?"
The contingency plan for extraction was simple. They'd use light weaving to make themselves into House Sadeas guards, and Ela into someone lowborn. They'd march her out the gates with ease, capturing the High Princess right out from underneath the watchful eyes of her guards.
"Yes,"
Shallan said, waving the soldiers to bring the woman over. Ela walked with her eyes closed, still maintaining her fatalistic air. Shallan took Ela by the arm, then breathed out and let the light weaving surround her, changing the woman to look like one of the sketches Shallan had done recently, a kitchen woman with rosy cheeks and a wide smile. Ela didn't deserve such a kindly face, nor did she deserve such a light treatment. Shallan felt an unexpected spike of disgust at touching Ela. This creature and her husband had plotted and executed a terrible plan to betray Dalinar. Even after the move to Urithiru, Ela had worked to undermine him at every opportunity. If this woman had gotten her way, Adolin would have died before Shallan met him. And now they were just going to take her in to play more games? Shallan let go, hand going to her satchel. Radiant was the one who emerged, however. She grabbed Ela by her arm and towed her over to Adolin's soldiers, handing her off. "Take her out with the others," Adolin said. "You got the rest of the conspirators?" Shallan asked, walking back to him. "They tried to escape out the side doors we burst in, but I think we managed to round them all up." Ishna and the soldiers, Adolin's men, hand-picked from among his finest, led the disguised and bound Ela out the door. The High Princess sagged in their grip. Adolin watched her go, a frown on his lips. "You're thinking," Shallan said, "that we shouldn't have ever let her leave Urithiru, that it'd be easier if we'd ended her and the threat she represented before it went this far." "I'm thinking," Adolin said, "that maybe we don't want to travel that road." "Maybe we started already. Back when you—" Adolin drew his lips to a line. "I don't have any answers right now," he eventually said. "I don't know if I ever did. But we should ransack this place quickly. Father might want more proof than your word, and it would be awfully helpful if we could present him with incriminating journals or letters." Shallan nodded, waving over Gaz and Red. She would have them search the place. And what of what Ela had said? Look for the rarest vintage. Shallan eyed the wines set out on the counter of the hutch. Why speak in riddles? Adolin and the others were coming in, Shallan thought. She didn't want them to understand. Storms. The woman had grown paranoid. But why trust Shallan? I won't get to answer. They won't let me. "Adolin," she said. "Something is wrong with this. With Ela. With me being here. With—" She cut herself off as shouts sounded in the antechamber. Shallan scrambled out, feeling a sense of dread. She found Ela Sadius lying on the floor, foam coming from the mouth of her fake face. The soldiers watched with horror. The High Princess stared up with lifeless eyes. Dead.
Caledon flew through the smoke billowing up over the manor. He soared down toward where the townspeople were being threatened by the strange fused and his soldiers. That was Weber, the manor's gardener, being held against the ground with a boot to his face. "This is obviously a trap," Syl said in Caledon's mind. "That fused knows exactly what to do in order to draw the attention of a windrunner. Attack innocents." She was right. Caledon forced himself to drop carefully a short distance away. The fused had torn a hole in the wall around a side entrance of the manor. Though flames licked the upper floors of the structure, the room beyond the hole was dark, not yet afire. At least, not completely. As soon as Caledon landed, the singers released Weber and the others, then retreated through the broken hole in the stone wall. 5 soldiers, Caledon noted, 3 with swords, 2 with spears. The fused carried 1 captive as he strode into the building. Thin, with a gaunt face, the captive was bleeding from a slash along his stomach. Godecki the edge dancer. His stormlight had apparently run out. Storms said he was still alive. The fused wanted to use him as bait, so the chances seemed good. Caledon strode toward the broken wall. "You want to fight me, fused? Come on! Let's have at it!" The creature, shadowed inside the building, growled something in his own rhythmic language. One of the soldiers translated. "I will fight you inside where you cannot fly away, little windrunner. Come, face me." "I don't like this," Syl said. "Agreed," Caledon whispered. "Be ready to go get help." He lashed himself upward slightly, enough to make him lighter on his feet, then inched into the burning building. This large room had once been the dining chamber where Caledon's father had eaten with Rochon and talked of thieves and compromises. The ceiling was burned in patches, the fire consuming it from above. Flamespren danced along the wood with a frantic delight. The hulking fused stood directly ahead, 2 soldiers at each side. They moved forward to flank Caledon. Where was the 5th soldier? There, near an overturned table, fiddling with something that glowed a deep violet black. Void light? Wait, was that a fabrial? The light dimmed suddenly. Caledon's powers vanished. He felt it as a strange smothering sensation, as if something heavy had been placed on top of his mind. His full weight came upon him again, his lashing cancelled. Syl gasped, and her spear puffed away as she became a spren, and when Caledon tried to resummon his blade, nothing happened. Immediately Caledon stepped backward to try to escape the range of the strange fabrial, but the soldiers quickly rushed to surround him, cutting off his retreat. Caledon's assumption that he could beat them easily had relied on his shard spear and his powers. Storms. Caledon strained to create a lashing. Stormlight still raged inside him and kept him from needing to breathe the acrid smoke, but something was suppressing his other abilities. The fused laughed and spoke in Alethi. "Radiance, you rely too much on your powers. Without them, what are you? A peasant child with no real training in the art of warfare, or—" Caledon slammed himself against the soldier to his right. The sudden motion caused the singer to cry out and fall backward. Caledon yanked the spear from the man's hand, then, in a fluid motion, whipped it into a 2-handed lunge, impaling the 2nd soldier. The 2 soldiers on his left recovered and leaped for him. Caledon felt the wind encircle him as he spun between the 2 of them, catching one sword, aimed low, with the butt of his spear as he caught the 2nd one, aimed high, right behind the spear's head. Metal met wood with a familiar thunk, and Caledon finished his spin, throwing off both weapons. He gutted one man, then tripped him, sending him stumbling to the ground in front of his ally. These soldiers were trained well but hadn't seen much actual combat yet, as evidenced by how the remaining singer froze when he saw his friends dying. Caledon kept moving, almost without thought, spearing the 4th soldier in the neck. There, Caledon thought, as the expected ribbon of red light came darting toward him. He will go for my back again. Caledon dropped his spear, pulling a throwing knife off his belt, and turned. He rammed the knife into the air right before the fused appeared, slamming the small blade into the creature's neck, angled between 2 pieces of carapace. The fused let out an irk of shock and pain, his eyes wide. Fire made wood snap overhead, and burning cinders dropped down as the enormous fused toppled forward like a felled tree, the floorboards shaking with the impact. Blessedly, no red ribbon of light rose from him this time. "That's a relief," Syl said, landing on Caledon's shoulder. "I guess if you catch him before he teleports, you really can kill him." "At least until the Everstorm rebirths him," Caledon said, checking the singers he'd killed. Other than the one dying slowly from the gut wound, he'd left only 2 alive, the one he'd shoved and the 5th one across the room who had activated the fabrial. The former had scrambled out the gaping hole in the wall to escape. The latter had left the fabrial and was inching to the side, his sword out, eyes wide. The man was trying to reach Godecki, perhaps to use him as a hostage. In the fray, the wounded edge dancer had fallen to the ground beside the husk after the fused had teleported to Caledon. Godecki was now moving, but not under his own power. A small, gangly figure had the edge dancer by one leg and was slowly dragging him away from the fight. Caledon hadn't seen Lift sneak into the room, but then again she often showed up where one did not expect her. "Take him out the hole, Lift," Caledon said, stepping toward the last singer. "Are your powers suppressed too?" "Yeah," she said. "What'd they do to us?" "I'm extremely curious about this too," Syl said, zipping over to the device on the floor, a gemstone covered in metal pieces and resting on tripod legs. "That is a very strange fabrial." Caledon pointed his spear at the last singer who, hesitantly, dropped his sword and raised his hands. He had a jagged skin pattern of red and black. "What is that fabrial?" Caledon asked. I... The soldier swallowed. "I don't know. I was told to twist the gemstone at the base to activate it.
That's void light powering it, Syl said. I've never seen anything like it.
Caledon glanced at the smoke pooling on the ceiling. Lift, he said.
On it,
she said, scrambling over to the device while Caledon kept the soldier guarded. A moment later, Caledon's powers returned. He sighed in relief, though that made Stormlight puff before him. Nearby, Godecki gasped, unconsciously breathing in Stormlight, and his wound started to heal. Strengthened by the light, Caledon grabbed the soldier and lifted him up, infusing him enough to make him hang in the air. I told you to leave the city, Caledon growled softly. I'm memorizing your face, your pattern, your stench. If I see you again, ever, I will send you hurtling upward with so much stormlight that you will have a long, long time to think during the fall back down. Understood? The singer nodded, humming a conciliatory sound. Caledon shoved him, recovering his stormlight and making the man fall to the ground. He scrambled away out the hole.
There was another human in here, Lift said. An old light-eyed man in beggar's clothing. I was watching him from outside the building and saw the man come in here with Godecki. A short time later, that fuse broke through the wall carrying Godecki, but I didn't spot the other man.
Rochon. The former city lord had told Dalinar he was going to search the manor's storm cellar to free imprisoned townspeople. Though he wasn't proud of it, Caledon hesitated, but when Syl looked at him, he gritted his teeth and nodded. So long as it is right, he thought. I'll find him, Caledon said. Make sure Godecki recovers, then get that Fabrial to Brightness Navani. She's going to find it very interesting.
Shallan removed the illusion, revealing Iale's face, spittle dripping from her lips. One of Adolin's men checked her pulse, confirming it. She was dead. "Damnation!" Adolin said, standing helpless above the body. "What happened?" "We didn't do this," Vale thought. "We decided not to kill her, right?" Shallan's mind began to fuzz, everything feeling blurry. Had she done this? She'd wanted to, but she hadn't, had she? She was more in control than that. "I didn't do it," Shallan thought. She was reasonably certain. "So what happened?" Radiant asked. "She must have taken poison," said Vatha, leaning down. "Blackbane." Even after many months as Shallan's squire and then agent, the former deserter didn't look like he belonged with Adolin's soldiers. Vatha was too rough. Not sloppy, but unlike Adolin's men, he didn't care much for the spit and polish. He showed his disdain by leaving his jacket undone, his hair messy. "I've seen someone die like that before, Brightness," he explained. "Back in Sadeas's army, an officer was smuggling and selling supplies. When he finally got found out, he poisoned himself rather than be taken." "I didn't see her do it," Ishna said, sheepish. "I'm sorry." "Nails nuts," muttered one of Adolin's soldiers. "This is going to look bad, isn't it? This is exactly what the Blackthorn didn't want. Another Sadeas corpse on her hands." Adolin drew in a long, deep breath. "We have enough evidence to have seen her hanged. My father will simply have to accept that. We'll bring troops to the war camps to make certain her soldiers don't get rowdy. Storms! This mess should have been cleaned up months ago." He pointed at several soldiers. "Check the other conspirators for poison and gag them all. Shallan will disguise the body like a rug or something so we can get it out. Gen and Natam, search Iale's things in the next room to see if you can find any useful evidence." "No," Shallan said. Adolin froze, glancing at her. "I'll search through Iale's things in the next room. I know what to watch for, and your soldiers don't. You handle the captives and search the rest of the building." "Good idea," Adolin said. He rubbed his brow, but then, perhaps seeing the little anxiety spren that appeared near her, like a twisting black cross, smiled. Don't worry. Every mission has a few hitches. She nodded, more to put him at ease than to indicate her real feelings. As the soldiers moved to follow his orders, she knelt by Iale's body. Ishna joined her. Brightness? Do you need something? She didn't eat poison, did she? Shallan asked softly. Can't be certain, Ishna said. I know a little about blackbane, though. She blushed. Well, I know a lot. My gang would use it on rivals. It's tough to make, because you need to dry the leaves out, then make a gum out of them to get it to full potency. Anyway, eating it isn't the best. If you can get it into the blood, though, it kills quickly. She trailed off, frowning, perhaps realizing, as Shallan had, that Iale had died very quickly. Shallan knew of blackbane herself. She'd studied up on poisons recently. Would I be able to spot a pinprick? Shallan thought, kneeling beside the corpse. Either way, she suspected Iale had been right. The Ghost Bloods hadn't trusted Shallan to kill her, and they'd sent a second knife to see the job done. That would mean they had an operative among Adolin's guards, or Shallan's own agents. The idea made Shallan's stomach twist. And this person was separate from the spy Iale supposedly had among Dalinar's elite? Storms! It was tying Shallan's mind in knots. Look the body over, Shallan whispered to Ishna. See if you can find evidence if this was self-inflicted or if someone else killed her. Yes, Brightness. Shallan quickly walked back into the room with the wine hutch. Gaz and Red were already working to gather Iale's things. Storms. Could she trust these two? In any case, Iale's prediction had proven correct. And it was possible that this room held secrets Marays didn't want Shallan to find.